change can take a predetermined or a constructed direction. With the predetermined direction, it means you can tell, or the future is already predetermined, it's already known. With the constructed direction, it's the actions you take as a change agent or the change leader that determines the future of the organization. It could be a great future or a bad future. The predetermined trajectories. Van de Ven and Paul argued that life cycle and evolutionary theories present change as a prescribed process that unfolds over time in a pre-specified direction. So you can tell from new venture creation where you concentrate so much on markets and products to revitalization or decline, these stages could be predetermined. You move from new venture to expansion and professionalization. Just like an example of a moth. The first stage of eggs, moving from egg or turning from eggs to larvae, this stage is predetermined. You cannot skip this if you want to have this adult moth. Likewise, in some businesses, the change could be predetermined, could be known. The process is constrained by some imminent or inherent code or by factors that are external to the immediate system when it comes to this predetermined trajectory. With the constructed trajectory, the theological and dialectical theories view change trajectories as constructed in the sense that goals and the steps taken to achieve the goals can be changed at the will of at least some of those involved in the change process, the change leader. So those leading change have the power to intervene and act in ways that can make a real difference. As a change leader, you know where your organization is coming from and you are in this current state. So the actions you took to lead you to this present state are known from your past state to the current state where you are now. But whatever decisions you make from now going forward will determine which future your organization is going to look like. So this is a constructed trajectory. It's what you do now that will determine or dictate what the future will look like. It can either be future 1, which is a good future, or future 2, which is a fair future, or future 3, which is a bad future, where an organization will go into takeover or decline or failure. But it could be a good future where you are making a lot of profits. So the actions you take now are key. They're very important. The theological and dialectical theories highlight the role of human agency and assert that the agents can act to affect the change in ways that will either promote or undermine the organizational effectiveness. So human agency is very key here. Let us change gears and talk about the steps in the change process. What are these key steps in the change process? Managing change involves 7 core activities. It starts with recognizing the need for change and starting the change process. So you need to recognize the need for change. Once you have recognized the need for change, then start on the change process. Start on the process. What do you have to do to start on the change process? We will expound on this later on. Each of these steps are going to inform our next discussions in the coming weeks. So once you have recognized the need for change and you have started on the change process, the next step is to diagnose what needs to be changed, but also formulating a vision of the preferred future state. You make a diagnosis. What do you need to do when you're doing a diagnosis? There's need for collecting data and analyzing that data to come up with plans. You need to do some research, and this as well is going to inform your assessment task too. You have to do a lot of research to collect data to understand the organizational situation. You have to do a proper diagnosis. Diagnosis is gathering information and analyzing that information to make deductions. You need to come up with valid deductions about the change process. So once you have known the need for change or what needs to be changed, then come up with plans as the third step. You do planning. Planning is a wide concept. In this change process, you need to have a change plan. This change plan includes sub-plans. For instance, the communication plan. How are you going to communicate to the people who are impacted by the change? How are you going to communicate to your staff members to enable them to support the change you're proposing? What about facilities, human resource, and systems? What about finance? There's a lot of costs which you need to meet when you're doing change or when you're effecting change. Maybe you're changing technologies. You need to procure new systems. So you need to plan for the finance or for the costs involved in the change process. You need to plan for time. What's the timeline like? It shouldn't stretch for so long. So you need to plan for how long should this process take, the change process take. Is it going to be for 1 year or for 2 months, such that you have the change in place? When you plan to implement the plans, once you have come up with your baseline plan and the corresponding sub plans, then it's time to implement. Go ahead and implement the plans. Implementation changes the focus from from planning to action. That's the purpose of implementation. So it's real action. You're doing things. You're acting on the plans. And as you are implementing or you are acting, you are effecting change, you need to review the change progress. Don't forget this important step. Reviewing helps you to put you back on track. You might come up with configuration plans or plans to adjust the process. You drop what works and you go with what you drop what doesn't work, and you maintain what works. You review progress as you're implementing the actions. As you're implementing whatever works, whatever plan works, you need to sustain that. And that takes us to step 5, sustaining the change. You need to sustain all the actions which work. And you have to put this, to record this, because it's a lesson learned. All through this process, there is a lot of learning, leadership, and management. You need to manage and lead people issues. And this runs across the change process, leadership and management. So all from recognition and starting the change process all the way to sustaining the change, there's a lot of management and leadership issues. You need to manage people. You need to manage those individuals who are holding on a strong ideology, who don't want to let go Those individuals who want to maintain the status quo, the difficult individuals. But also you need to manage people and lead people such that you have all stakeholder buy-in or stakeholder support. The last step in the change process is learning. Like leading and managing people issues, learning also runs across the process, the change process. From recognizing the need for change all the way to sustaining the change, there's a lot of learning. You come up with lessons learned repository. You document whatever works. Keep it in a safe place, in a safe file. Record it. And this can be useful for future planning or for future works because it's a lesson learned. These 7 key steps are going to shape our next discussion for the rest of this unit because this is the change process. So we need to learn how do you recognize and start on the change process? What exactly do you do when you're diagnosing what needs to be changed and formulating the change vision? What is involved in the planning aspect? What is it that you have to plan within the change process? And once you have planned, how then do you go ahead to implement the plans? Shifting the focus from planning to action. You're implementing the plans. And what are those plans? So as you are implementing, you need to review the change progress. Reviewing change progress is very key. It's very important in the change process. And again, you need to sustain what works. The winning strategies are sustained. Whatever doesn't work can either lead to a pivot, you pivot and come up with new plans, or you forget completely. You drop what doesn't work because it doesn't work. There's a lot of leadership and management. So we need to talk about leadership and management. What's the best leadership styles? Leadership is so wide. You can talk about things to do with distributed leadership, adaptive leadership, entrepreneurial leadership, and so a lot has to be covered under the leadership aspect. Then traditional leadership styles. What works and what doesn't work? Do you need to adopt contemporary leadership styles within the change process? Do you need to embrace or to put on entrepreneurial shoes? Where is empathy? But also management. Remember, management is about the PLOC, controlling, planning, leading, organizing, and controlling. Where do those aspects of control come in? Where are the aspects of planning, the aspects of leading, the aspects of organizing? What has to be organized in the change process? All these features have to come out, and we shall talk about them in detail in the coming weeks. But also learning. We learn along the process, and we need to do a lot of documentation. Remember, knowledge is going forward. So what we learn today, we keep it and we revise on it for future action. In summary, while all the process theories present change as evolving a series of events, decisions, and actions, they differ in terms of the degree to which these events, decisions, and actions follow a prescribed pattern, but also they differ in terms of the direction of change or the change trajectory, because change trajectory is predetermined or can be influenced by those involved in the change process.